Here's something they're not going to teach you in school. Everything you buy has to be paid for twice. In fact, if you don't pay the second price, you may as well throw whatever you bought in the garbage. Most people completely ignore the second cost, but today I'm going to walk you through exactly what it is, and I'll explain how you can use it to your advantage by using some fancy graphs. And in the end, I'll touch on a little secret that you can use to reframe this whole concept in a more positive way. Now, if you're new here, I'm Jason. I'm on a journey to better myself, and I made this YouTube channel in the hopes that some of you might join me on that journey. So this whole second cost thing, what exactly do I mean? Well, whenever you buy something, of course, there's the initial cost to acquire that thing, which you pay in money. Now, we're all painfully familiar with this one. But once you've paid the money, you're not quite done. In order to get any benefit out of that thing, you have to pay the second cost, which is time. You can buy a pull-up bar on Amazon for like $20, but of course, paying that $20 isn't going to make you fit, right? You have to spend lots of time doing pull-ups before you actually receive the benefit from that item. Think about all the items in your life. All of them require time to set up or use to get some benefit out of them. Let's break this down a bit by using some fancy graphs. Okay, so what's going to be on this graph? Well, on the x-axis, let's put the effort you put into using an item. And on the y-axis, let's put the value that you get from that item. So let's just say you bought a copy of the amazing book Atomic Habits. If you only give yourself 30 minutes to skim through it, well, you're just scratching the surface of the value that that book holds. If you give yourself 5 hours to read all the way through it, well, now you've got a lot more value from that book. But you'd get even more value if you gave yourself 7 hours and took notes while you read. What about taking 10 hours to read through it twice? Now, notice the shape of this graph, and that as we put more and more time in, the additional benefit we get becomes smaller and smaller. Now, let's think about a hobby like piano. In the first 30 minutes of playing piano, you haven't learned very much, maybe just like hot cross buns. 5 hours in, and you've got a song or two under your belt. 20 hours in, and you're learning more, beginning to recognize the underlying patterns hidden within that keyboard. It's what I talked about in this video. 100 hours in, you're getting pretty good. 1,000 hours in, and you can play songs by ear. Now, let's compare the shape of the piano graph to that last graph about reading a book. Notice how with the book, there's sort of a limit to how much you can get out of it, no matter how much time you put in. After all, it's a book, it's finite, it's like 300 pages. But with the piano graph, there's not really a limit, right? I mean, you could spend a lifetime playing piano and still discover new insights and patterns every time you sit down to play. Now, I'm not a piano virtuoso, but if you don't believe me, take it from this famous composer and pianist. Music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music. For most things in your life, you can make a hypothetical graph like this, where you compare how much effort you put into an item versus how much value you get out of it. And it can be useful and fun to go through different examples. Like when I bought a couch, it didn't do me much good just sitting in boxes. I got zero benefit until I spent an hour assembling it. Once that's done, the value I get shoots all the way up to the top of the graph because I've unlocked the full potential from this item. Putting more effort in doesn't unlock a better couch. How about growing fruit? It takes months and months of work before you get any fruit, and once you harvest, you get all that benefit at once. So how do we use these graphs to make better use of our time and money? Well, if you know my channel, you know that I have tons of hobbies, and I love every one of them. One of the keys to having so many hobbies is to use the second cost idea to be smart about what hobby I'm going to try next. Take my record player, for instance. I bought it, I took 30 minutes or so to set it up, and I've been enjoying it ever since. No additional time required. It's similar to me assembling my couch. I put in the effort once, and I don't have to worry about it after that. I call this the set it and forget it category. Another example is this custom holder that I designed and 3D printed for all my stuff. Now, it took me some time to make it, but now every day I get to enjoy how everything slides satisfyingly into place. On the flip side of set it and forget it are things that you continually have to put effort in to enjoy. In this video, I talked about the cold plunge I got, but that cold plunge doesn't do anything for me just sitting there. Every single morning, I have to get in there and conquer my fear before I get that amazing jolt of energy and motivation that the cold plunge gives me. Another big example for me personally is books. Somebody once told me buying books and actually reading them are two entirely separate hobbies. I guess there's even a word for this phenomenon in Japanese. The fact that that word exists tell us that it's beyond just a me problem. If we all were honest with ourselves about how much time things take when we buy them, we maybe wouldn't have this problem. So maybe that means checking the page count before you buy a book online. That way you're not surprised when an absolute monster shows up in the mailbox. And this gets at a bigger point that I want to make. Once again, take a look at my channel and you'll see that I have tons of hobbies. I'm a firm believer in the amazing power of hobbies, because not only do these hobbies make my life so much more enjoyable and enriching, but they also teach me about how the world works, each of them in their own unique way. One of the reasons I'm able to have so many hobbies is because when I'm considering what I'm going to try next, I'm thinking about both the money and the time that I'll have to invest. Whereas most people maybe just see the cash price as the main barrier. And that's why there's so many guitars, pull-up bars, and project cars, little rhyme for you there, sitting in people's houses just collecting dust. They maybe fail to account for how much time they'd have to spend on those things. All that to say, I'd encourage you to be aware of the second cost when buying stuff. But the video doesn't end there. There's actually a secret lurking beneath this concept that turns the whole thing on its head. Up until now, we've been looking at effort as something to minimize. You put effort in and eventually you get enjoyment out. But what if I told you that you can get enjoyment from the effort itself? Now, this is where the real magic happens, so hold on. Let's pull up that graph from earlier about growing fruit. Well, you could look at this graph and say, I'm not going to get any benefit out of this for months. This fruit tree sucks. It's not worth it. But maybe the act of going to your garden every day and checking on your plants is enjoyable. You feel like you're nurturing a living thing as you give it water and nutrients. Now, instead of impatiently waiting for fruit at the end of the season, taking care of your plants is something that you enjoy, just 'cause. And when the fruit does come, it's a nice bonus. In fact, many things that are worthwhile, require you to invest some time before you enjoy the outcome. In fact, I'd say most things do. Many people trudge through this first part of the graph annoyed, just waiting until they can get to the reward at the end. But if you can reframe the time you spend in that first part of the graph and actually enjoy that process, all of a sudden the graph completely changes, since you're no longer counting on that thing, that object, to give you enjoyment and value. You're actually creating enjoyment out of thin air, all on your own. As an example, I've really been getting into surfing, so I bought a new surfboard. Now, I kind of suck at surfing, so lots of times I go to the beach and I just get thrown around by the waves for an hour or two. Sometimes this gets to me, but I try and focus on the fun that I'm having and how lucky I am to be at the beach at all. If you can reframe the time you invest in your hobbies, you turn the part that most people hate into the part that you enjoy. Instead of making that present moment your enemy and a means to an end, you've made it a friend. You enjoy its company. And as an added benefit, you're much more likely to get that reward at the end instead of getting frustrated and giving up. Now, look, I don't want to be a total idealist here. Realistically, there's plenty of things that no amount of positive thinking will make you enjoy. For instance, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to get into a habit of going to the gym. But, personally, I've found it's pretty disengaging and boring. Just throwing around weights doesn't really do it for me. So instead, I try to stay fit by doing things that I find enjoyment in, like surfing, rock climbing, yoga, that sort of thing. Now look, we've just scratched the surface with this whole concept. I inherently had to simplify it, otherwise you and me would both be here talking for an hour through all the different nuance. For instance, what if you split up the idea of effort spent and total time put into an object? What if we account for things that you need to continuously spend money on? All those are topics for another time. I'd also like to mention that I didn't come up with this on my own. I read this amazing post on a blog called Raptitude many years ago. The concept stuck with me and inspired me to make this video. Now, everybody I share this with has a different take on the concept, and I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below if you haven't left it already. And if you're brand new here, each week I dive into a new topic that I'm exploring on this journey of self-improvement and crafting a better life, in the hopes that some of you will join me on that journey. If that's something that interests you, you can consider subscribing, but no pressure. If you like this video, you may enjoy this one as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.